What's up guys, in this video I'll be showing you how to set up your MGC Square-1. First, let's talk materials. First, for the lubricants, any lube you have or like to use will probably work well in this cube. For me, I like a silicone setup. So for my heavier lube, I'll use some silk. And for my medium lube, I'm going to be using Lube Go Speedy. Screwdriver is also pretty important, just to tension the puzzle. Then of course the extra parts the MGC Square-1 comes with. That's if you want to switch white or yellow with black. To switch the caps, you can use your fingernails, but if you can't, something like a blade or a knife like this might work fine. This one's a plastic one. Obviously not using a blade is probably preferred. Something like a knife might be better, but just use it with caution. And finally, just some paper towels or something like that to clean off the puzzle. Alright, let's first talk about how to take off these caps because they're quite interesting. So the way these caps are held on is with this, and they sit on top like this. And to pull them out, you just want to push them up. Same for the corners and edges. You want to push the caps up, and then maybe use a nail or the blade to get it off. So here's how you take off the caps without disassembling the puzzle. For the edges, some of them are pretty easy actually. Just turn it 45 degrees, put your finger in here, kind of like you're taking out an edge on 2x3, and then push up. And then sometimes the cap just falls out like that. And from here, these pieces can be separated like that, and then you can switch white or yellow for black. So yeah, edges are pretty easy to take off. Next, for the corners, it's a bit harder. What I do is just put my finger here and then put pressure and push up like this. It's kind of scary because it feels like it's going to break the tube. So I guess do this cautiously if you're going to do it. So push up, put pressure here. You hear that bit of a sound, which is the cap coming off. And a bit more pressure. And the cap should come off like that. Remember, you want to take it off the cap upwards and not from the side or anything. That's just how the mechanism works. And from here you can just remove these pieces and switch out black. However, if these methods don't work for you, maybe the caps are on a bit tighter, or you're afraid you're going to break it maybe, I would recommend taking apart the puzzle first and take off the caps with the pieces separate from the puzzle. That way you don't break anything, and it might be a bit easier. So speaking of disassembling it, let's do that. You can just turn top 45 degrees, find this ledge in the front, and then push it out. And the same for the other side. If you push the back ledge, it's hard to come off because as you can see, they're kind of angled. So use the front one to take it out, like that. Now to disassemble the puzzle, just unscrew the screw. So if you want to switch the caps with the pieces disassembled, here's how you do it. For the edges, left hand you can hold the rest of it, right hand just push up. From there you should get a bit of a gap, and then just use the blade or something to just pry it out. So that's how you take apart the edge. Same thing for the corner. Hold the base with your left hand, which is pretty much the primary parts, and just push up like this. Get that opening. And once you hear that sound, you can pretty much just pry it out. Like that. So if you don't know the design of this corner piece, it might be hard to take it apart. But the main thing you need to know is that you have to remove the cap from the top, connected with these pieces. I find it pretty useful to take off any factory lube in the cube. So first for the core, you can just wipe around it like this. It shouldn't be too bad. For these inner parts, I don't think that's a big issue. I think a Q-tip would work pretty fine here and get most of the parts inside, but I think it's not that important. Then for the edges and corners, just get the bottoms and the sides. I think that's fine. Again, you can use a Q-tip or something like that to get the insides, but I don't think it's a big deal. Next, I pretty much just put all the pieces back like they were before. I do this for one half. For the other half, this is where I start lubricating the puzzle. The edges are quite small, so I won't be lubing these. But the corners have quite a bit of surface area, so I'll be using these. So the MGC Square-1 is actually quite fast. The slice is actually not too bad for me, but the top and bottom layers are quite too fast for me. So to fix this problem, I'll be using some medium lube, Lube Go Speedy, on the bottoms of these pieces to slow down the UND layers. If I get them on 4 pieces, I think that should be enough. So looking for contact points, we see a bunch of them here, so I just lube this part, and this part. Here is fine too, but the more you lube outside, it gets on your hands when you're solving, which is quite annoying. So I just want to lube the inside parts, not this part. So drop or a bit more here. Same thing on this part, and here too. Since this lube isn't too heavy, I could use a generous amount, and even if I overlube it a little bit, it should be fine. If you're using some heavier lube, I would recommend watching how much you put on here. If you put too much, it's going to be too slow. Now we can put the pieces back onto the core. Finally, for the slice, I do want to slow this down a little bit. For here, I'll be using silk because this one's a bit of a heavier lubricant. And I won't be too generous with this because it's already quite heavy. So with the half without the screw, you can put some lube inside here. Then also a good amount on the outside pieces. And remember not to go too far, otherwise it will get on your hands when you're solving. So keep the lube closer to the middle. It's a bit of a swirl right there. And a bit more on this other slice. That should be enough. Finally, just put it back together, like that. Now for tensions, this is actually really important in this puzzle because the mechanism allows for a lot of corner cutting, but makes it a bit unstable. Because of that, you want to keep this at a pretty tight tension. Since the corner cutting is pretty good, you don't need a tight tension. Even at tight tension, it's better than the Volt V2 in corner cutting, so it's fine to have it tighter. So first off, I screw it all the way until I feel the screw on the other side, which is about now. From there, I do about 2 full 360 turns on this screw. Here's my tension. As you can see, it's quite tight. You can't see too far into the mechanism, but that's the tension around where I like. And depending on how my solves go on this, I can always tension this a bit more or a bit less to make it better for me. Let's solve this thing quickly. As you can see, really nice sound. There we go. And finally, let's put the caps back on. So there's how to set up your MGC Square-1. At the end, your results should hopefully be pretty good. With my silicone setup, it complements the cube quite well. It's a pretty high-pitched, smooth, and really quiet sound. As you can hear there. The tensions feel good, not too loose or tight. At these tensions, it cuts quite well. And also when you try to do this lockup thing, it actually won't do it, which is really good. You don't want any cube-shaped lockups. And for the speed, the U and D layers are much slower than before, which is really good because they were too fast for me. And the slice is also really, really controllable. So that's pretty much it on how to set up your MGC Square-1. Hopefully your Square-1 turned out as good as mine. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll be happy to answer them. So yeah, thanks for watching.